Well, good morning. It's October 16th, 2023, and my name is Jack Parks. The name of my channel is Flamin' Groove Listens, because I like to listen to music. And today I'm entering a contest for Jason Skilz, favorite concerts of all times. Um, Kind of an interesting concept. I thought I'd kick it off with my very first concert when I was a 16-year-old kid, 1965, Omaha Civic Auditorium. I saw the Beach Boys. Hell of a show. Brian wasn't there. Glenn Campbell was in his place. First show, it was great. So, going on to the list here. Next up for shows I want to talk about, in 1968, a friend of mine offered me a seat in a Valiant to go from Lincoln, Nebraska to Des Moines, Iowa to see Cream. And there were 6 adults, college students, in this Valiant. The driver was amazing. He drove like exactly 60 miles an hour. Look at the map. Lincoln, Nebraska to Des Moines, Iowa is a long drive. Went to the show. It was freaking great. Got back in the car and drove back to Lincoln because we were kids and that was what you did back then. So let's see what else we got. Next up, back in February of 1969, I was hanging out at the Student Union of the University of Nebraska. Some talk about a show coming up that night or the next night. I can't remember now exactly what happening in Omaha, and you know, I'm going, oh, I can't go. I got class the next day, and blah blah blah. And some young lady who I don't know, except I remember she was attractive, turned around and looked at me and said, "It's the Grateful Dead. You have to go." And she was freaking right. Boy, it changed my life. Grateful Dead, February 1969. I saw they came back through Omaha again in April of 1969, and a real main reason why I ended up in the San Francisco East Bay area in 1970. Grateful Dead, saw them first in 69 and last in 95. I don't have an exact number, but I'm guessing it's up in the 80 to 100 concerts for the Grateful Dead. Sure do like them. Next up, October of 1969, I dropped out of college and went to the record store. I mean, what else do you do, right? And I bought 2 records by this band, the Flamin' Groovies. They had a 10-inch record, which I didn't bother to pull, but it's here. And they had this record available for sale, and they had a ticket to the show in a week. So I bought both records, listened to them for a week, and went to another show that just changed my life. Flamin' Groovies, Omaha, Nebraska, late October 1969. They're just fucking awesome. Matter of fact, they missed their plane, I guess, because after the 4th encore, and they had kicked their drum sets over to show they were done, the manager says, well, you know, we missed our flight already, so we might as well do one more. Fucking awesome band. If you ever get a chance to see them, they're still playing. They got a long and storied history. They broke up and were gone for years, but a version of them are back together, and it goes into way too much history. But I saw them most recently in late 2022. They're still playing bars, and they're playing bars that I just, you know, I'm getting old. I gotta have a seat. You know, if they're not playing a place where I can have a seat, I don't go very often anymore. Next band, And this band here, Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen, and the band that it was second on opening act for him on this concert I'm going to talk about. When I moved to California in 1970, I'd heard about them, and they were playing around in Berkeley a lot, and they were one of my favorite bar bands ever. And they have they were great pickers. They did a lot of covers of a lot of great old country honk shit. And I don't care what Tommy it As the World Turns or whatever, As It Should Be. Tommy it As It Should Be gave them a bunch of shit, and fuck him, you know what I mean? So anyway, on June 6th, 1971, now I had seen this band lots of times, and they were playing, and that happened to be the first date with my lovely wife, Susie. And I remember the date because it was exactly 7 days a week before she turned 21. But, you know, it was Berkeley, 1971, and she was allowed to consume some beer, let's just put it that way. And the opening act that night, I got another Commander Cody I wanted to show you because they had, this was a live radio broadcast from 71. There's the band. They were just great. But the opening act on June 6th or 7th, 1971 was Asleep at the Wheel. These guys came in the bar. They'd been on the road. It looked like they'd been on the road for weeks just to get there. Nobody had ever heard of them. The bar was, it was the bar down on 10th and University in Berkeley, which had a couple of different names, and I'm not sure what name it was on that particular evening, but I think it might have been Jerry's Stop Sign. I know it was for a while. Now it's a pet hospital. Big, huge dog and cat veterinary place. But back then it was a great rock and roll club. And these guys, you can see it's a big band. And they all came in, they had, denim jackets on that it had hand embroidered Asleep at the Wheel across the backs of them. They were beautiful. They had a girl singer, Chris O'Connell. Jeez. Asleep at the Wheel is still playing. Last I heard, they were just touring Australia. Absolutely fantastic band. It's evolved. Ray Benson's the only permanent member, so to speak. But this original band put together about 10 albums without very many breakup, Great band. So we're going to move on. So as I said, I moved to California back in, I got these dates here written down somewhere. Back in October of 71, got a chance to see Traffic, Fairport Convention, and Billy Preston. And boy, oh boy, Traffic, it was this band was the show that I saw. It wasn't this album. This is a live album, but they're Traffic, 1971. They were great. Coming up next, this was a great show. A friend of mine turned me on to Bob Marley kind of early on. This was the album that had just come out when I first saw him back in July of 1975 at the boarding house. And my friend that organized the outing, I think 14 or 18 people that he got tickets. Everybody wanted to go to this show. And it turned out it was a day I had to work late. So my wife and I were the last two people in the boarding house. Now, if you remember the boarding house, it was a fairly small club. And it was tables and chairs, and they were little tiny tables, just enough for your cocktails, and chairs jammed in, so, And Susie and I were large people at the time, so we didn't really love the club, but they had some great shows. So you'd go once in a while. And this was a show. We walked into the show, and it was, we had tickets, and our friends had saved us 2 seats, and because it was so packed, they saved us 2 seats right on the aisle in the 3rd row off to the left. And when we walked in, every seat in the house was full except for those 2 seats, and the 3rd row, the center of the 3rd row was completely empty. Little reserve signs on everything. We're sitting there, and a couple of minutes later, I mean, the show was all ready to go, and the members of the 3rd row showed up, which included I think he was either right across the aisle or 1 seat in from right across the aisle. One of the members of the 3rd row was Jack Cassidy of the Jefferson Airplane. I'm not sure who all the other members of the 3rd row were, but they had walked in from backstage, so they were all pals of what turned out to be just an incredible show. Bob Marley and the Wailers at the boarding house. This had just come out. This is an earlier record that I got. Great show. Kind of started me on my reggae look. So the next big show I went to was in July 1975. I saw my, I can't read my notes here. July 1975, I went to my first Rolling Stones concert. This record was long out by that time, but this record, which is not shown often, back in the 1970, I discovered a spot where I could mail order for some new British records. And I'd heard about they were better than the American ones, and they had different. And I think I bought a good handful of records all at once, mail order. In 1970, I got a brand new white LP for the Beatles, and I got this Rolling Stones record, and the first 3 mono, or maybe the first 2 mono Rolling Stones records, mail order. This is a German-only release, and it's kind of, Around and Around, Good Times, Bad Times, It's All Over Now. And it tells you what Around and Around is a shake, Good Times, Bad Times is the blues, It's All Over Now is a shake, Empty Heart is a shake, Convincing the Blue is a blues, Not Fade Away is a limbo, Bye Bye Johnny's a shake, You Better Move On is a slop, I Want to Be Your Man is a twist, 2120 South Michigan Avenue is a shuffle, If You Need Me is a blues, and Poison Ivy is a shake. Made in Germany. It's on the Decca record label. But the 2120 South Michigan Avenue that is on this record is it's a lot longer than the one that's on the American versions all the time. It's the same instrumental, but it's just a couple more choruses. Anyway, I think I saw the Stones 5 times. I think the last time was probably 99. The last Rolling Stones concert qualifies as maybe one of the worst sounding shows I've ever been to. Sat up in the nosebleed seats. The only member of the band I could see was Charlie Watts, and I was straight down. The sound was all muddled, terrible. But the first Rolling Stones at the Cow Palace in '75, that was awesome. That was an awesome show. So, shortly after that, in October 31st, as a matter of fact, Halloween. God, I don't remember it being Halloween, but it was, I guess. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at the Paramount Theater. Now, I'd seen him once before, and it was pretty good. I'm just not sure of the date. I think that was at the Berkeley Community Theater. But this show, Born to Run had just come out. He had got his picture on the cover of Time magazine and Newsweek magazine on the same week. And that's something those magazines did not care for having to happen, but he did it. Yeah, I've seen Springsteen 6-7 times maybe, but that one it sticks. It was a great show, no question about it. But we're talking lots of shows here. Next up, Toots and the Maytals. I've only seen them a couple of times, but it says here the first time I saw them was in November 11th. God, Veterans Day, isn't that? Armistice Day. Toots and the Maytals at the Long Branch. Now, the Long Branch was a beer bar in Berkeley on San Pablo and Dwight Way that was long time one of my favorite places to go see music. Commander Cody played there. Sleep at the Wheel played there. The shows, there was a band called the Shakers that played there like every Sunday night and was ladies' night. Girls were free, boys were $2. Sunday night, and it was they made one record, and if you can find a copy, you might enjoy it. It's called Yankee Reggae, and it was a bunch of white suburban kids playing reggae music, but they did a good job. But Toots and the Maytals at the Long Branch, man, it was freaking amazing. You got to remember, the Long Branch probably only held 200 people, and they cram in 300. And for this show, I was right at the stage. These guys were like 3 feet in front of me. Great band. So a couple weeks later, I guess, when was this? A couple weeks later, the 23rd of November, saw Jimmy Cliff at the Paramount. Nowhere near as good a show as the Springsteen and the E Street Band at the Paramount. But if you remember the soundtrack for The Harder They Come, which I've got that too, but this, Jimmy Cliff, I've seen him a couple times now too, and he always puts on a great show. He's a great singer. And coming up, what do we got next here? Well, this may be my favorite Long Branch show ever. Patti Smith, February something, at the Long Branch, 1976. This came out late 75. It was like her first national tour, I think, and the record store that I loved, Rather Ripped Records, best record store ever. I think they promoted the hell out of her. I've got her first single, Piss Factory. The one I've got is a bootleg that it's a repressed bootleg that they put out because you couldn't get the original, and I got a copy of that in my singles pile somewhere. But Patti Smith, she was wearing that famous Keith Richards T-shirt that night that I saw her. She's quite a character. And her band is really good, and most of them are still with her. I mean, I think somebody left. But Patti Smith. So, what do we got next? Well, then probably my last waltz. Those of you who know, I'm sure, have seen the movie. And if you've seen the movie, you've seen most of the show, although they jacked it around a little bit. This record is the original record that came out shortly after the show, a couple of years after actually. It was Thanksgiving, uh, November 25th, 1976 is when the show was. And this is my favorite bootleg that I have. This is the complete Last Waltz. 4 CDs, and it takes about 4 hours, 4+ hours to go. It's got a nice booklet. It reprints this little story that they handed to you on a big round sheet as a program when you walked in. The Last Waltz, pretty damn good concert. I got a chance to see it. The story about this is in November, right? So in June or July, I'm at Bass, if you remember Bass, Bay Area Seating Service, the precursor to Ticketmaster and all that other crap, had just started. They were charging $0.25 convenience fee, which really pissed me off, but you had to pay it to get a ticket. And I was in there buying tickets for something else. I don't remember what. And the Bass ticket office in downtown Oakland was basically just 2 ticket windows that, just had people in them, and there was nothing else there. It was the rest of the business was behind. You couldn't see it. There was a door behind where, you had to go in to get to work. One or two women would be sitting there selling tickets on the computer terminals. And I was standing in line to buy tickets for something, and this guy sticks his head out the door and says, "It's a go to sell tickets for the band show." And boom, all of a sudden, there's tickets to the band show. And I get up to the counter and I go, what band show is this? And they had the band at the Paramount in September. And I knew a lot of people that liked the band, and I don't know, my credit card had money on it or whatever, because I sure didn't have enough cash. But, tickets weren't as expensive back then. So I bought 10 tickets, third row, Paramount Theater, to see the band. One of my favorite shows. Distributed the 10 tickets to me, and Susie got 2, and 8 of our friends got the other 8. And we're waiting for September. So August comes along, and they announce that the show's been postponed because Levon's having hemorrhoid surgery. If you're a drummer with hemorrhoids, that's not going to work. So at this same time, I had a really good friend, Richard, who worked for Bill Graham Presents. And he called me and said, they're going to tell you about the show's being postponed. Don't turn in your tickets. Just wait. So, I waited. About 2 weeks later, I think, they announced that what became the Last Waltz, and those of us with tickets to the Paramount, I think we had to pay $10 more. We had to pay up extra, but we didn't have to pay. I think the tickets were like only $35. Now, what you got to remember about the Last Waltz, and you only sort of get when you watch the movie, is not only did you get the big show, before the big show started, first of all, they had a guy playing piano, and they served Thanksgiving dinner to the entire audience on tables and chairs. It was Narcy David, a famous caterer in the Bay Area, owns a bunch of restaurants and stuff. He did the catering. It was a fine Thanksgiving dinner for, being catered at a rock and roll concert. And as they were clearing the tables and stuff from dinner, they had professional dancers. They had the Berkeley Promenade Orchestra playing waltz music, and professional dancers, and then you were invited to join them if you liked to waltz. But these guys were good. They were waltzing around the floors of Winterland, you know. And then, of course, the show, and the movie took out quite a few songs because the movie's not nearly 4 hours long, and they added a couple that they filmed later that obviously weren't at the show. But yeah, The Last Waltz, one of my favorite shows. Now, I think Jason Skilz had another favorite show. I got 2 more to go here. Another favorite show is I was fortunate enough back in November 15th, 1977 to see Elvis Costello's first show in America at the Warfield? Warfield? No, not the Warfield. The Old Waldorf, I think it was called. It was this small club. Saw a lot of good shows there. Saw the Runaways there a couple weeks later. But Elvis Costello's first show in America, it was pretty damn good. Let's just put it that way. And yes, Jason Skilz, I saw the Sex Pistols on January 14th, 1978 at Winterland. Supposedly their last show before they reformed later on. And did you ever get the feeling you've been cheated? Were the last lines out of his mouth. And it was an interesting show, but I'm not going to say I'm a Sex Pistols fan. Well, Jason, congratulations on your 800 subscribers. I just went over 100 myself, which is it's only taken me 4 or 5 years, but that's okay. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.